In this video, I'm back with Richard Williams from Xenophon Press, and he's going to be talking us through how he uses the 18th century square of La Guérinière to execute the flying change, which is interesting because the flying change isn't in La Guérinière, it's a modernization of the 18th century. Very, very cool. There is a bit of a hack at the end, which is he gives you tips on how you raise the horse's back to make sure that that new inside hind leg jumps through. So do make sure you watch all the way through.
Well, I would put two squares together, right? So I would be in, let's say, shoulder in on one, or if you want to do, I think the shoulder in is better. Shoulder in on a square to the right. So shoulder in right and a connective piece, and then change to shoulder in left on a square to
Are
the
the
left.
two squares on either side of the center line?
Right.
So center line, square and square, right?
Yeah, or on either side of the half arena line, it could be
Okay.
it could be there and there. So that's the way I would do it. But basically, remember, when we're doing a flying change, and we're going to be doing this in the future, the horse, it's the same horse's body, it's the same musculature, it's the same skeleton, it's the same rider, it's the same rider's brain, it's the same rider's musculature, it's the same rider's physique that is doing all of this stuff in the walk, in the trot, and will be doing it in the canter. So as I like to say to riders, canter is not a different country. It's not a different country. It's not like we're in Canada for cantering and United States for trotting.
Cantrida.
Yeah. So canter is the same country. It's the same place.
Make canter great again.
Right. Exactly. So there's an acronym for that, right? But so basically, then I will do this to teach the flying change. So I will be, let's say, tracking left and bending the horse to the right, just with right 10-meter bend. And I will have practiced going through the raising of the back, and I'm, let's say, trotting. Then I will change the horse through the raising of the back to the left bend. And as I change to the left bend, ask for the left lead canter. So I'm basically doing probably the most important part of the canter strike off, or the canter flying change, which is a canter flying change is nothing more than a canter strike off from the other lead.
Right. A canter to another canter while staying in canter. Yeah.
Right. But so if we just say, okay, you feel you're bent right, you're trotting or you're walking, and as you change to this nuance of left bend, you can canter left lead.
And you're doing that on the center line in between these two squares.
Yeah, that can I like actually helping the rider to do that on the wall. I like, because then the rider can see when they're maybe the shoulders are too far to the left. They have a visual reference point. So the
change point is not in the middle between these two squares.
I like to teach flying changes on the wall. First of all, because they're generally not on the wall in dressage tests. Second of all, because you have a visual frame, even if we only have grass and sand or a fence or a physical wall, the rider has this frame of reference, a visual frame of reference, that if they're getting too sideways, the haunches are not lined up with the shoulders, they know right away when that has happened. And if we're waiting for the instructor to tell them, it's kind of too late. In the middle of the arena at X, it's kind of like you're out there in a petri dish. Which way is the amoeba, floating? It's kind of irrelevant, right? But it is relevant, because when you look at dressage tests, or how do we judge the criteria of, let's say, tempi changes, the number one criteria by which these are judged is straightness. The straightness of the change. We want the cleanness of the change, but they always ask, is the horse straight?
Do you remember on our last conversation, you said that sometimes if you are looking down from above, let's say at the Spanish Riding School of Vienna at a piaffe, which is supposed to be dead straight, but you and I both know it's not straight. The horse goes like this, a little bit in the piaffe,
Right.
but we kind of polish it off so that it kind of looks kind of straight, but it isn't. I would posit the same about flying changes. They're never straight, you know.
Right.
They can appear straight. We can work on making them look straight. One of the things I find sad sometimes when I watch attempts at flying changes being taught is people and horses being made to do them straight before they can, and a learning curve not being allowed. That generally the first changes are going to come with a swing of the quarters somehow.
Oh,
And
yeah.
later we can sandpaper that off and polish it. Yeah, sure. But let the poor bugger do it in the way that actually works for them, which is probably going to be a bit of a whoop or a whoop. And then we can figure this stuff out. This idea of perfection from the get-go is such a tyranny.
Yeah, I
And
totally
it
agree.
puts
Totally
people and
agree.
horses in despair, I think.
Yeah. I totally agree. And just noticing is information. It's just information. So for example, like if that were the case, then let's say the horse had a tendency to throw the haunches to the right in the change to the right. Then what I might do is put the wall on that right side,
Yeah,
just as kind of like a, for the horse as much as for the rider, just like, okay, well, there's kind of a barrier, so you really
right.
can't afford to throw your haunches, 18 inches to the right as you change. So changing to that, let's say you're on the true lead on the wall and you're changing to the right to the counter lead. The other, so, and the wall is on your right, then that wall will help you passively straighten the horse.
Yeah,
So
totally.
how do you get the horse to change that? Practice doing this Simon Says. Like I had a 7-year-old, a Lusitano with one of my clients in Pennsylvania, and I just started the lesson and did all this counter trot work with her. And we did a little bit of true trot work, but we did counter shoulder in and a renvers and then simple bend to the outside. And then she did a serpentine, and on every serpentine loop, I made her bend the horse the other way.
Right.
And so she was never bending in the direction that she was traveling. She's like, why are you doing this? It's like, you'll see. And then I had her go down the wall, and we were at R, S, V, or P. And I said, I want you to ride down the wall with your counter bend, and now ask the horse to canter on the outside lead. She's like, oh, no, I've never done that. If we never do something because we've never done it, then we will never do it. We have to do something. It's like you have to give yourself the opportunity to try to do something new. Otherwise, we circle the drain at second level. That's the
Oh, I
problem.
love that. That's so
Circling in other words, this flying changes are hard. Life is hard, and then there's the end of life. So the life is hard is actually the good part. That's the good part. That's the fun. The fact that we have something difficult to do is fun.
Yeah.
That's the fun. So we have to keep room. It's like, I don't care. I'm not. She's like, well, I always canter the horse 2 times in the direction, of the lead. I said, no, he is now cantering on the inside lead because you've trained him to just canter on the inside lead. He's not cantering on the left lead. He's cantering on the inside lead because he just learned that you said good boy every time he canters on the inside lead. So he's not really responding to your aid. So you have to kind of untrain him and say, I want you to canter on this lead over here, the right lead, while tracking left. It's kind of mind-blowing. So then you see, okay, I have to recycle back in my training. And I was just so glad the horse cantered on the correct lead, the inside lead. So we have to spend this time of just picking up the lead of choice.
Sure.
So once you pick up this lead of choice, Simon Says, sometimes it's the teacher whose name is Simon, and sometimes it's you, the rider,
That was
is
Xenophon himself, right? Who said, "I'm not the best teacher or rider here. In fact, it's my mate Simon up the road in
right,
Athens, but he doesn't want to write a book, so I'm going to write the book." But
right,
Xenophon
exactly,
refers to Simon. Yeah.
right, right. So Simon says, yeah. So 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 why do you know why we don't see these flying changes in De la Guérinière at that time?
Tell me.
Here's why. And why do we see in Baucher's time one
100
tempi
years
changes?
later, 100. Yeah.
Yeah, one tempi changes. So, 120, 130 years later, he's
No
like,
flying changes to 1 times tempis. Yeah,
to
it's
one time
intriguing.
tempi, boom,
Why?
boom, boom, boom. Why? Why and how? Why and how? Do you know why and how?
Tell me.
Why? Okay, because what happened with Baucher is he put the horse in what's called a horizontal balance,
Hmm.
meaning he equalized the balance from the front legs and the haunches, more or less 50-50 in De la Guériniere's time, because he was training horses for kings and royalties and ladies with large hair and a
What's
nice
wrong with having large hair?
nothing, but pearls. And basically, they did not want to go fast. They wanted to look really fantastic and go and get paid a lot of money and a lot of attention by going slow. How do we make the horse go slow? Weight his haunches. Put his haunches down so the horse goes down. So the horse was crouching down behind. We see it in all the engravings. The horse has got like these acute angles in the haunches, and the front end very, very light, but they were going very, very slow. In the 19th century, they said, well, we don't want to be like the royalty anymore. We don't like royalty. Actually, we cut most of their heads off, or we,
At least
discard
in
them.
France, yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. We need to get rid of them. We are now the nouveau riche. We're the bourgeoisie, and we have a new style. And we want to go faster, and we want to go horizontal, and we want to be novel, and we don't want to do anything that smelled like what the kings and queens were doing that we got rid of. So because the horse was very, very seated, he was able to do, back then, he was able to do courbettes and levades and caprioles and terre-à-terre and seated things, and just not going very fast and doing all these airs above the ground with low angle. That's because the horse was seated. But when the horse is this seated on its haunches, with so much proportion of its weight on its haunches, what it doesn't have in the haunches is mobility. It doesn't have the ability to change from right lead to left lead because it's so squashed down behind. This is why you don't see flying change. Flying change is talked about in De la Guérinière in the chapters that are not in the blue version, but are in the
Okay,
green version.
so tell us what he says about them.
Basically, he's like, well, and he's sort of happenstance about it, and it's basically, and this is probably a topic for another cast or a video, where we're basically using the center line as our format. So not a square. And what we're doing is we're possibly having a jousting, or we have a lance, or we have a pistol, and we have the reins in one hand, and we canter down the center line. We collect the horse. We half pirouette at the far end of the arena. We turn around.
This is a passade. Yeah.
And then we have
passade.
facade, and then we have something that we have to do. We have to use our javelin and hit the watermelon, or the whatever it is, the target with the number 3 above it, and then in the middle, and we may be doing that in a gallop, and in the middle of the gallop, let's say at X, which wasn't called X then, we do a flying change, a single flying change. We
What
go to
does
the
he
other.
call it?
Single flying change.
He does call it single flying change.
Yeah. Flying change of leads or change of hands, but he's staying in the gallop. And you could do this change of lead right before your pirouette. You could do it in the middle. You could do it right at the end of the pirouette. So there were sort of like three 3 places you could do this change of lead, but what they wanted to do is not always be staying on the right lead example and just keep turning right with passades to the right, because they knew the horse would become, stressed if they didn't do some work to the left and some work to the right. So, but that canter that they're using is a much more forward canter. So I don't know, did that answer your question?
Sort of. I've got 2 more questions, and then I'm going to ask, how do you teach La Guérinière squares? I'm still not entirely clear. You said you put 2 squares together, and I imagined, therefore, you did the change in the middle, but you say you do it at the wall. So, but I've got a small challenge for you, which is that we know that there are 3 basic systems of dressage, and most of us think of dressage as Doma Classica. There we are in a manege, in a rectangular or circular or square thing that's a sort of artificial version of planet Earth, right? And we're doing this balletic version of the thing. But we also know that there's Doma Vaquera, which people would call working equitation now, but basically you're out there on the hacienda and you're working the bulls and the cows, and you have a garrocha, a lance, to keep those bulls away from you because they're cheeky. And you've got to do all sorts of collected work and extended work with that. And we see that performed beautifully, or we see it performed roughly, but there it is. It's an amazing thing. And then we have rejoneo, the rejon being the bandolero. We're going to stick that thing in the back of the bull. Not very nice for them, but nonetheless, it requires crazy good horsemanship to be able to do it. And you're doing a ton of flying changes when you do that, a ton. Because if you don't, your horse is going to fall over. And you've got to be independent of aids because it's just all happening too fast. And it's basically the combat style. And then you can make it balletic and do it in the manege. And that's how we think of it. But of course, there's other options. So we know that at the time of La Guérinière in the 18th century, there was another dude down there in Portugal called Marialva, who the teacher of Oliveira, that guy Miranda, was basically riding, we can assume, largely in a sort of hybrid style of La Guérinière and Marialva, because that was a Portuguese style, and Marialva was coming out of all those traditions in the 18th century, because he actually wrote down the rules for rejoneo, and his son was actually killed during a bullfight. And then they actually, because of that, banned bullfighting in Portugal for 100 years, and they brought it back later because, it pleased the crowds. Okay, fine. And that's why they wear the 18th century dress while they do it down there. But flying changes are very much part of this. And in combat, and if you've ever fought somebody on horseback or pretended to fight somebody on horseback, it's tricky to do that if your horse can't do flying changes, because there's a pretty strong chance you'll fall over, both of you together, because it's happening quite quick. So I can see why in those later chapters is saying, yeah, when you're going a bit more forward, you can do this. At the same time, as an owner of Lusitano horses myself, I absolutely know that my horses can do flying changes from a very seated position. They can do 1 times tempi almost in terre-à-terre. It's correct, but they totally can. You might see me doing a Rupert, it's not good, you can send your horse forward, but nonetheless, the horse can do it. So, however, thoroughbreds, warm bloods, yes, we definitely need a little bit more forward motion. So what is also true is we don't see an emphasis on the flying change,
right,
in these 18th century or 17th century dudes. I think they're sort of assuming, because they've got these really well balanced Baroque horses, that when you change your weight to the side in this way, once you've done a ton of work on 2 tracks, your horse kind of will figure it out and kind of do it, because they don't give us a bunch of really technical support on this, right? You can't ring up, La Guérinière support and go, yes, indeed, can I help you? And you're like, yeah, what about this flying change stuff? You're like, well, I'm sorry, we can't help you because, it is something that you do with your weight. But later on, they will say, yes, absolutely, put your outside leg back and, do counter first. So it comes in later. So how are you personally using La Guérinière square, which, as you said last time, there are 3 versions of it, more or less, that you use.
Mhm.
They can also be rectangles. Can you really just narrow the bleep down to
Yeah.
how and where on that square? I know you've done it in walk, you've done it in trot, you've simulated, we got it. How are you getting that first actual change out of this 18th century thing, which was not designed to produce flying changes? I find that intriguing.
Okay. So in answer to your question, I think of this as a variation on a theme. Okay. The theme is the square. So like in music, you have variation on the theme. So I don't limit myself to what de la Guériniere's description is. So I'm going to make these squares bigger. I'm not just going to do those 3 exercises. I'm going to do shoulder in. I'm going to do shoulder out. The most important thing is that.
But you're going to do them on a square or a rectangle because
I'm going to do it on a square and a rectangle. And the big thing that I'm doing is I'm changing the exercise from one bend to another, which he doesn't really tell you to do.
Okay.
In other words,
so you're adapting.
So I'm adapting and I'm saying, okay, I'm doing shoulder out for 3 sections of this. And then I'm now taking the shoulder out and making it haunches in.
Yeah,
so I'm
changing the
bending.
bend, effectively.
Yeah, I'm changing the bend, but the movement is the same. Or then I'll do shoulder in for 3 sections or 2 sections, and then do it to renvers.
Where you ask for that change of bend, geographically, where is that between these 2 squares?
Well, the squares are big. So let's say I like 20-meter squares because it just gives you more space. There's 2 places where I ask for it. One is like we have a 3rd level test. I don't know what it is, where you go down the wall at F, you do shoulder in, and then at B, you change to renvers, and in one of our tests, and then you're doing renvers to M. So you're doing it in the middle of the straight line or the long wall. So one place to do this change is in the middle of the long piece of straight section.
Using that wall to kind of help the horse with a bit of support.
Yes. And when you're getting more advanced, you could do this as you cross the arena with no wall reference. Okay. But initially,
that's what you meant earlier by you helping the horse with a bit of the wall.
Yes. So the crutch or the guidance would be, let's say you're going from R to P on that wall. The letter in between, halfway point, is B. So you could make it right there. That's one place to do it. Another place to do it, to make these changes, is in the corners. So going from shoulder out, turn the corner now to haunches in.
I love to make changes in corners, and I'm always surprised that more people don't.
Yeah. So
it seems to be an obvious point because it's like a point of a square.
Both of them are super valuable. So I actually don't. I think of these things when I'm doing them in the trot. Usually de la Guérinière also tells us that the true suppling gait is the trot.
Absolutely. The building gait. Yeah.
The walk is, let's introduce things in slow motion to the rider. Let's introduce things very carefully in slow motion so the horse doesn't get too out of hand. Let's do it in the walk. So the walk is not really a goal. The walk is sort of like a preliminary step.
Sure.
So we're going slower and things aren't
figuring it out. Yeah,
figuring it out and doing it slow motion. But that's not really where the gymnastic and suppling happens. The suppling
we just need to introduce the concept.
Yeah, the suppling happens in the trot. So, and he says this over and over in the book. He says you must get the horse supple in the trot first before you ever do this stuff in the canter or the gallop.
Absolutely.
As he
Or the
says,
horse just isn't strong enough. Yeah.
so I think I'm thinking of these flying changes in the trot, getting the horse supple to the flying change, and not having a period where the horse gaps and drops its back down as we change bend, but actually does the opposite, warms its back, raises its back, lifts the rider. Here's why you want that raised back. You want the raised back because with the raised back muscle and the horse on his abdominal grid, this is what unites the change. This is what makes the bridge to make sure the haunches are not late, or the front legs are not early, or the haunches are not late, or the haunches are not early and the shoulders early.
I had a horse where the haunches would be early.
Right.
It was a good problem to have.
Right. So
Yeah.
here's the other piece of theory, which he doesn't say at all.
Yeah.
But I, deduced. When you have a horse that is in he actually talks about this. I think he calls it the aubin, not the aubin, but it's the I don't know what his exact word for it is, what we would call a cross canter. So the horse is cantering left lead behind and right lead in front. I always say that this is because the horse's spine is in an S shape. So he is cantering in agreement with the shape of his spine. So his spine is bent to the right in front. So he's on the right lead with his front legs. And he is bent to the left behind the saddle or the back half of his body. So he's agreeing with that. He's in functional accord with
right. And in the wild, he better be able to have this kind of flexibility or he won't survive. Yeah.
Right. When we ride and we put
we
weight
add monkey butt. Yeah.
Yeah. When we ride on top of him and we put weight on that spine that's in this, a rickshaw with a square wheel, it does not feel good. And we add trauma to the horse's back because of our weight. So
everything is wrong with monkey butt at that point.
And when the horse is doing it in the field because he's doing some S curves or there's a little knoll here and a little drop there, and he's just adapting, it's not really that harmful because there's no weight on his back.
Not bearing any weight. Absolutely.
So we have found that when all riders weigh something, when they weigh something, it's not healthy for the horse.
Did you just call me fat?
No.
Viewers, are you going to let him talk to me like this? It's terrible.
No, I said you
no
weigh
respect.
something. You weigh something. It's a number that we don't know. So because we all weigh something, the horse can't carry us that way. Yes, so when you're doing these changes of bend, it is important that the rider develop the skill. That's why I say do it in slow motion, so that we're paying attention to being able to scan and evaluate the degree and direction to which the entire horse's body is bent, not just his neck. And because we're a visual and manual society, we think, immediately.
Species, I would say.
Pardon?
Visual and manual species, not just society. Right. That defines us.
Right.
Like
we got to where we are by using our hands and by,
which we're not allowed to do when we ride horses. So it's tricky.
Right. So the thing about riding is you have to ride with your asset. You have to ride and feel with this part of your body that you're sitting on. Absolutely. And your legs, where there's, I don't really know of maybe figure skating, I guess, but you're not really sitting on something else.
Cross-country skiing, oddly enough,
has its own movement, and you have to learn to see with your asset.
Totally. Yeah. See with your ass.
Right.
It's I see you, baby. See with your ass. It's so true. One of the reasons why I'm always reassuring any student I've got, relax, because this thing is impossible. The thing that we're trying to sit on regards you as a predator. And God did not design this thing to carry monkeys. That's a monkey idea. And monkeys, by the way, are top heavy and are not designed to sit on moving barrels. And the horse also has a sense of humor. And the monkey is always the joke. And this thing solves its problems by violently running away. Oh, and as you said, as a species, we solve our problems with our eyes and our hands, and by crouching forward if we're, in fight, flight, freeze, which we can't do if we sit on a horse. And in the moment of most vulnerability on a horse, we have to actually open ourselves like an opera singer in order to. This thing is freaking impossible. Yet it's a miracle because it does happen. So let's enjoy that miracle together, but we can also relax. It's probably going to take a while. It's okay. Otherwise every bugger would be doing it, but they're not. And the reason they're not is because it's tough, but it's good crack. We can have fun while we do it. Okay. So yeah, go ahead.
I'm not trying to avoid your question. So once I've taught this,
you're totally trying to avoid my question.
Once I've taught this in the walk, in the trot, and I taught myself to make the change of bend in simultaneous. So it's head, neck, shoulder, midriff, and haunches all reduce bend and now take on the new bend, not head first and then the middle.
Which will take about a decade to figure out. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so once I do that, then basically what I do is I do the RSVP, and I'm doing a slight bend to the outside just by being on left lead. And then I do this change of bend in the canter at B, and I'm just slowly rounding the horse, straightening the horse, and changing bend, changing the bend, and then changing the lead. So my right leg that was an outside leg behind the girth, and my left leg, which is an inside leg at the girth, are coming closer and closer and closer to being ambiguous as I straighten the horse. So the horse is like
quantum potential.
I'm straight. Your legs, we don't have one leg way back and one leg way forward. They're now ambiguous. So now I'm riding him in what I call the straight canter. It happens on the left lead, but in this straight canter, I've conditioned him to raise his back and be balanced.
Okay.
In this. So he's not running on the forehand, he's not slowing down and sucking back.
He's in a balanced horizontal.
He's listening in this slowing down the perception and the passage of time. So we're not doing the rushed change. We're doing the protracted perception of time change. So when I'm doing these flying changes, I actually try to experience time passing much slower than it actually is. I slow it down in my head because I noticed when I was learning them, my heart would race.
Yeah, sure.
The world's going by so much faster. My thoughts are racing.
Oh my god! The change is coming! The change is coming! I got to make the change.
Tensing. Yeah, absolutely. So when I teach people, I say I want you to train yourself to deep breathe and slow down your perception of time so it feels like you're really cantering at the speed of a walk, even though you're really not. It's very, very slow. And so when you do this, then you have relaxation and you have stretch in it. And then my new inside leg, I do not bring my new inside leg forward as an effort. I only allow my new inside leg to come forward by the canter of the new lead, putting it there.
Got it.
So I don't do what I call drop kick the football.
Sure. Not a sort of overly deliberate shifting legs.
Yeah. So the horse is between the aids, and they're like, well, this is really what I feel like and we feel like together when your seat is melded to me when I'm on the right lead. yeah, this is what we do. This is how we relate to one another. So of course we must be on the right lead. And what this does is it makes the horse relax, and the rider and the horse don't separate as this flying leap. Now, that isn't to say that when the horse is doing this under the foreign weight of the rider, that the horse doesn't struggle, that the horse doesn't do a bit of a leap, that the horse doesn't do a little bit of a lurch. So, okay, but what the rider must do always after the lead is just ride calmly in the same size canter that you had prior. So we don't want a stuck canter. We don't want a bolting canter.
Right, we don't run away after the change.
Right. We just want, and so I like it on the wall because the wall provides some kind of, measure of about how fast the world is going by. You can see how fast we're going in the canter because we see these posts or the wall passing us by at a certain speed. If you're out in the middle of the arena, your reference point is not as concrete.
There's something because of this highly complex process that you talk about, I generally teach my horses to do their flying changes in hand, because
wow,
I know that I'm going to have to teach a student up there, and I want to absolutely guarantee that there's going to be no failure, because as you know, flying changes can involve quite a lot of failure, and even on schoolmasters, and that's not nice for anybody, pony or monkey. So after years of trying it out in these different ways with myself and finding lesser and greater degrees of success, I found that if I trained the horse to do a flying changes in hand and then sequences of flying changes in hand, then I could pretty much guarantee for anybody that it would happen as long as I was within 10 meters, not 10 meters, sort of.
So how did you learn how to do that?
Watch the next video coming up with Richard Williams. We're going to talk about how you do the flying change in hand. Hope you enjoyed that. Do check out more of our videos with Richard Williams on our channel. If you want to take our free course, look below, heliosharmony.com, how to train the horse in the Old Masters system and have fun doing it, and have your horse have fun doing it. And also check out Xenophon Press and their amazing books on the Old Masters. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe. These things massively, massively, massively help the algorithm to help us to help you. If you really like what we're doing here, there's a thank you button down below. Just shoot us a few bucks. Enough of you do that, it really, really helps us to set aside the time to make more content.